Welcome to The Explainer. Think back to the last time you scrolled past a headline about a major global conflict. Did you ever stop and wonder, how exactly those specific words were chosen? Because the truth is, modern conflicts aren't just fought with weapons and troops on the ground anymore. They are fought with meticulously crafted words, strategic framing, and massive global media narratives. So today, we're diving into the architecture of influence. We are going to look strictly at the blueprints, the highly sophisticated ways that nations proactively shape what you see, what you read, and ultimately, what you think. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the global information battlefield, then deconstruct Israel's democratic model and their Hasbara toolbox. After that, we'll examine Iran's soft war strategy and their digital proxy toolbox, before wrapping up with how both ultimately shape global consent.
Section 1. The Global Information Battlefield.
Section 2. Israel's democratic model.
So, our first case study. Israel relies on what's known as the democratic model. Rather than relying on overt force or, say, completely blocking the news, they leverage something called Hasbara. Roughly, that translates to explanation. It's really about packaging their narrative so effectively that it reads just like an objective intelligence report. The goal here is to frame military actions as a strict democratic necessity for survival.
Let's unpack that word for a second. Hasbara. While it literally translates to explanation, in practice, it's a highly structured, strategic routine. It's the daily practice of explaining, framing, and formally validating political and military behavior to the rest of the world. And what's really fascinating here is that this is a strategy built entirely on persuasion and credibility. It's about shaping the narrative so seamlessly that the audience, us, actually adopts the perspective willingly.
Section 3. The Hasbara Toolbox.
So, how does this high-level philosophy actually play out on the ground? Well, they rely on a very specific set of linguistic tools. Think of it as a carefully engineered language of justification. It's designed to get you to accept certain actions before you've even had a chance to really analyze the details yourself.
When we break down this language of justification, we basically see four main pillars. First up, we've got virtue words. Words like democracy or self-defense that instantly create a positive association in your mind. Second are euphemisms, which use clinical, technical language to strip away the raw emotion of conflict. Third is the appeal to fear, which elevates local conflicts into massive, immediate global threats. And finally, shifting the focus. This is about actively redirecting the public's attention away from things like human suffering and pointing it strictly towards security. This right here perfectly illustrates the sheer power of those euphemisms in action. Just consider the raw reality of this phrase, the destruction of civilian lives and infrastructure. It's visceral, right? But run it through this communication toolbox, and suddenly it becomes a necessary, precision-guided security measure. It's incredibly clinical. It entirely neutralizes the emotional shock of the event, completely reframing devastation into just a sterile necessity.
Section 4. Iran's soft war strategy. All right, let's pivot and look at Iran. Their strategy is called Jang and Arm, or soft war. They view culture, media, and public opinion as a literal geopolitical battlefield, and they operate on this fascinating dual system. At home, within Iran, the media is strictly controlled. But for the outside world, they use a highly flexible, decentralized network of proxies and influencers to push their message out.
Let's formally define this concept. Jang and Arm, or soft war, isn't just a buzzword, it's an official Iranian doctrine. It explicitly treats culture, media, and your personal opinion as primary domains of geopolitical competition. The big takeaway here is that communication is deployed in two very distinct directions. Offensively, it's used as a weapon to aggressively contest foreign influence abroad and build transnational solidarity. But defensively, it's used to preserve their own domestic legitimacy back home. Here is the absolute core of that operational model, this dual infrastructure system. Internally, you have a tightly controlled authoritarian media system where the message is completely centralized. But when you look outwards, the strategy completely flips. It becomes this highly flexible, decentralized influence network. The whole point is to seamlessly infiltrate other cultures without ever looking like a clunky, state-run broadcast.
Section 5. The digital proxy toolbox.
To actually operate this decentralized network, Iran relies heavily on digital and cultural proxies. Unlike overt state messaging where you know exactly who's talking, the goal here is absolute plausible deniability. They want to insert their narratives into foreign ecosystems so naturally that the target audience actually believes the ideas were their own to begin with.
Let's break down exactly how these shadowy tools function out in the wild. First, they use what's called gray propaganda. This means concealing the state's origin by routing messages through local cultural or religious proxies to project authenticity. They layer that with divisive tactics. Now, they aren't necessarily inventing controversies, but rather they're finding pre-existing societal rifts in adversarial nations, like anti-war fatigue, for instance, and just cranking up the volume. Couple that with AI and perception management to flood algorithms, plus some strategic scapegoating of external adversaries, and you have an incredibly potent influence operation.
Section 6. Shaping Global Consent.
So, we've just deconstructed two vastly different architectures of influence. On one hand, you have Israel's Hezbollah toolbox, which relies heavily on clinical justification and appealing to democratic values. On the other hand, you have Iran's soft war toolbox, leaning on decentralized digital proxies and exploiting societal rifts. On the surface, these two methods look like polar opposites. But the absolute crucial takeaway here is that both state actors share the exact same objective: managing your perception. Both systems are meticulously engineered to bypass your critical defenses and actively shape your reality.
I want to leave you with a question to ponder long after this explainer is over. In an era of AI perception management and incredibly carefully crafted euphemisms, how is your own media consumption being influenced right now? The next time you read a headline, an intelligence report, or even a viral post about global events, try to look past just the content. Look at the structure. Look for those euphemisms. Look for the proxies. Because truly understanding how a narrative is built is pretty much the only way to genuinely understand the world around you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.